Chapter 25-21. Young eunuch Li clenched his teeth in hatred, but he couldn't move at all. Kai Chi went outside and called 2 Eastern Palace guards in. Without saying a word, they lifted young eunuch Li up and pressed him down on the bench. The planks fell with a crackling sound. Young eunuch Li was forcefully pressed down and the planks fell on his body. He lost all his dignity, and his face turned red as he screamed. Young Crown Princess was dressed in red, and her features were exquisite and unadorned. She walked out of the side hall and stood on the long steps, looking down at young eunuch Li, who was being punished, with an expressionless face. There were many palace maids and eunuchs standing in the courtyard, but none of them dared to make a sound. They all cautiously lowered their heads and looked down. After 50 strikes, the 2 guards dragged little eunuch Li from the bench and threw him on the ground without any force. Then they raised their hands in salute to the Crown Prince Consort and quietly retreated to the side. Arba coldly looked at the person lying on the ground. She formed a hand seal and waved her hand, immediately undoing the binding of the body-securing talisman. Young eunuch Li found that he could move and immediately struggled to stand up. He glared at Arba and angrily said with a dark face, "What is the meaning of this?" "Bring the food out," Arba said coldly. Kai Chi and Kai Xiu hurriedly directed a group of palace maids to bring out the dozens of dishes on the table. Arba casually picked up a plate of fried pumpkin and threw it at young eunuch Li's face. Young eunuch Li was shocked. He subconsciously leaned to the side and avoided the plate attack. Who knew that this young crown princess would throw the plates at his face one after another? Plates of porridge, noodles, and soup splattered all over his face, making young eunuch Li battered and exhausted. The palace maids who came with young eunuch Li were already trembling in fear. They knelt on the ground and didn't dare to raise their heads. Ah! Young eunuch Li was about to explode in anger. "You! Let him eat. Clean it all up," Arba said coldly. There was no warmth in his words. This little crown princess looked at little eunuch Li with mockery and coldness. She slid her finger and ordered the 2 guards standing at the side to go forward and escort little eunuch Li to eat the food on the ground clean. Congee, noodles, and all kinds of exquisite snacks, buns, and pastries were all stuffed into little eunuch Li's mouth by the 2 guards. Ah, wretch! Little eunuch Li felt that his mouth was full of something cold. Once it entered his mouth, he felt nauseous and wanted to vomit. How could the 2 Eastern Palace guards give him a chance to vomit? She kept stuffing food into his mouth until eunuch Li's eyes rolled back and his limbs trembled. When Zhao Tengdong heard the news and rushed over, little eunuch Li had already been tormented by the 2 guards to the point that he almost fainted. Zhao Tengdong hurriedly stepped forward and bowed to Arba. "This servant, Zhao Tengdong, greets the crown princess." The young crown princess looked at him expressionlessly. "Go and call over the head eunuch of the kitchen." "Yes." Zhao Tengdong immediately responded and sent a capable young eunuch to summon the head eunuch of the kitchen. Zhao Tengdong usually had a good relationship with the head eunuch of the kitchen, Eunuch Sun. At this time, he could only secretly break out in a cold sweat. From the looks of it, the young crown princess was quite angry. This matter probably couldn't be settled peacefully. Chapter 25-22. Eunuch Sun was nearly 60 years old and had a stocky build. When he walked, he looked like a tiger stirring up the wind. After hearing the summons from the Eastern Palace, Eunuch Sun was also at a loss. However, he did not dare to carelessly neglect this crown prince consort and hurried to the Eastern Palace with a young eunuch leading the way. As soon as he entered the garden of the Eastern Palace, he saw little eunuch Li being dragged to the ground by 2 guards. The eunuch's stomach was already bulging from the food he was stuffing into his mouth. His heart inexplicably sank, and a layer of cold sweat immediately formed on his palms. He hurriedly went forward and greeted, "This servant, Sun Ba, greets the crown princess." The young crown princess glanced at him coldly. "Kai Xiu." At this moment, Kai Xiu completely understood the young crown princess's meaning and also knew why the crown princess was angry. At this moment, she was also trembling with fear because she and Kai Chi hadn't noticed this problem previously. If the crown princess wanted to hold them accountable, then it would be due to negligence. Now, she could only quickly atone for her mistake. She took a deep breath and hurriedly walked over with a bowl of bird's nest porridge. She handed the bowl to Eunuch Sun, the manager of the kitchen. Eunuch Sun, all the breakfast that the kitchen sent over just now was completely cold, just like this bird's nest porridge. Please take a look. That can't be. Eunuch Sun was shocked. He took the bowl and touched it with his hand. It was indeed so cold that there wasn't a trace of heat. The weather was so cold, yet the crown princess had to put these cold things into her mouth? The weather was extremely cold, but sweat had seeped out of Eunuch Sun's forehead. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and explained, "Crown Princess, please understand. This servant can guarantee that the food was definitely warm when it came out of the kitchen. Moreover, on the way to the Eastern Palace, we used insulated food boxes to ensure that the food sent to each palace and courtyard was warm. Therefore, the reason why the food was so cold was definitely because someone had tampered with it." Was it the cold utensils that caused the food to become cold faster? Eunuch Sun's gaze was filled with disgust as he looked coldly at little Eunuch Lee, who was lying on the ground. Just now, he had felt that this person was a little pitiful, but now, it seemed that he deserved it. He was the one who wanted to offend the crown princess, so why drag him down with him? She was going to die because of him. "Little Lee, what is the meaning of this?" Eunuch Sun said angrily. "Why are you doing this?" Eunuch Lee Jr. straightened his neck and ate a stomach full of cold food. Now that his stomach was rumbling, he said impatiently, "Eunuch Sun, what did this servant do?" "This servant is just here to deliver the food." "Even if the food is cold, can't this servant bring it back and reheat it? Is it really worth it? Do you really think you're the high and mighty crown princess? She's just a woman who was brought up from the lower star area and is the crown prince's plaything. She's just an unpresentable thing. She doesn't know how to look at the big picture. She's so arrogant that she wants the whole world to know." Slap. A gust of wind from a palm came from afar and landed heavily on Xiao Li's face. Eunuch Lee Jr. was hit so hard that 2 of his teeth fell out. He looked back with a face full of horror. Mo Lien viciously strode in from outside the atrium like a gust of wind. Without allowing for any explanation, he stomped on this person's ribs more than a dozen times, each kick landing heavily on this person's weak spot. The pain caused little Eunuch Lee Jr. to spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. He rolled on the ground and howled as he trembled. "What is this? How dare you be so impudent in the Eastern Palace?" Chapter 25-23. Mo Lien stepped forward and grabbed the little fellow's hand. She coldly glared at the eunuch rolling on the ground and sternly reprimanded, "Zhao Tungdong. Why yes, this servant is here, this servant is here." Zhao Tungdong was so frightened by the crown prince's stern rebuke that his legs turned to jelly. "What are you doing? Letting a lowly servant like this run amok in the Eastern Palace? Do you still need this crown prince to teach you how to handle this kind of matter?" "Why yes." Zhao Tungdong quickly nodded in response and instructed the 2 guards beside him, hurry and take him away." A harsh glint flitted through Zhao Tungdong's eyes, and he couldn't help but ridicule little Eunuch Lee in his mind. This servant actually dared to point at the crown princess's nose and scold her for taking advantage of him? Who exactly was the one taking advantage of her without knowing it? "Take him away." "Your Highness the Crown Prince, please calm your anger, Crown Princess." Another voice came from outside the door. Eunuch Lee, the eunuch in charge of the Internal Affairs Department, had also come after hearing the news. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the situation in the court, and he hastily rushed forward to salute. "Your Highness, please calm your anger. This is all a misunderstanding. Little Lee didn't mean to offend the Crown Princess. The Crown Princess is benevolent and magnanimous, so she definitely won't bicker with a little servant like him." What did he mean by that? He was setting a trap for Jojo. If she dealt with this little servant today, she wouldn't be the benevolent and magnanimous Crown Princess. Unfortunately, setting a trap was useless. Sir Jojo had never been one to follow the rules since he was young. Albert expressionlessly tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Kill him." A black shadow abruptly descended from the sky and slit little eunuch Li's throat without any explanation. After killing him, that person acted as if nothing had happened and turned to kneel on one knee with a grin. He said loudly, "Huifeng greets your highness the crown prince and crown princess." Emo Lien nodded. It was easier to use people on her side. "Do you have any leads on Yu Xiu and the others' whereabouts?" Emo Lien couldn't help but think of a question when she saw Huifeng. Yu Xiu and the others, along with Situ Yi and the rest, ever since they followed Zhou to Shuntian Prefecture, according to Zhou, they had completely disappeared, like bubbles disappearing without a trace. Yes, there are clues. Huifeng cracked a smile. They've had great encounters. Right now, half of them are in Fire Smelting City, and the other half are in Icebound City, cultivating. Sir Zhou looked over curiously and asked, "Flame City?" "No, Crown Princess. It's Fire Smelting City." Huifeng felt that there was a great need to educate his crown princess. The 4 great cities that transcend the 3 provinces. Glory City, Shadow City, Inferno City, and Icebound City. Abba replied with an "oh," and didn't say anything else. Huifeng's mouth involuntarily twitched. Wasn't the crown princess the least bit curious? Why were her companions in Fire Smelting City and Icebound City? Didn't she want to know what kind of encounters they'd had in Fire Smelting City and Icebound City? Why did the super calm crown princess look a bit adorable with her stoic expression? Emo Lien glanced at Huifeng. "Give me a detailed report later." "Oh." Huifeng drooped his head. No wonder the crown princess wasn't anxious at all. Because she knew very well that Prince Emo would definitely tell her everything he knew after reading the report. Moreover, since Huifeng said that they'd had great encounters, what was there to be anxious about? Their days must have been pretty good. Chapter 25-24. The 3 of them were talking among themselves and had long abandoned the bystanders. However, Eunuch Li from the Internal Affairs Department was so angry that he nearly fainted. Even now, he still felt his heart trembling, and he couldn't catch his breath. The crown princess actually didn't give him any face at all and killed his godson just like that. After killing him, she acted as if nothing had happened and didn't even look at him. Li Hongchuan was so angry that he was trembling. When he lowered his head and saw Shaoli lying in a pool of blood, his vision turned black and he felt dizzy. This was but... Mu Estate Ting Lon Courtyard, eldest young master, you can't just barge in like this, eldest young master. Scram! Mu Xingchen kicked the maidservant in front of him, causing her to stumble and crash into the courtyard's door. He strode into the room. Mu Jingrue also hurriedly followed and advised, "Xingchen, we still don't understand the actual situation. Don't get angry first and see what it is. Hey, who are you people? How can you barge into Mrs. Boudoir?" Madame Li had just returned home from a tooth feast. As soon as she entered, she saw 2 tall men barging into her Ting Lan's small courtyard. Madame Li hurriedly glared at them and angrily shouted. Mu Xingchen pursed his lips and swept Nei Li to the side with a flick of his sleeve. With a dark expression, he quickly walked to the boudoir in the courtyard and kicked without any explanation. Boom! Xiao Ying-chun, who was lying on the bed and groaning, jumped in fright and hastily poked her head out from the canopy. She saw a tall and straight man walking against the light to her bed. When she saw this youth's appearance, Xiao Ying-chun's eyes couldn't help but light up, and a dazed expression appeared in her eyes. Who was this handsome man in front of her? This was a certain young master from the Mu family, right? Was he here to see Ying-chun? Xiao Ying-chun had the same problem again. She couldn't take her eyes off Mu Xingchen. When Mu Xingchen saw her, his handsome face turned even darker. He quickly walked up to her and unceremoniously pulled her down from the bed. Mu Jingrue hurriedly called out from behind, "Xingchen, Xingchen. Who are you? How dare you pretend to be my younger sister?" Without another word, Mu Xingchen gave Xiao Ying-chun 2 tight slaps. Poor Xiao Ying-chun. Her swollen face had yet to recover. This time, it was really an injury on top of an injury. Feeling the pain on her face, she cried out involuntarily. Moreover, she felt that the scene in front of her was extremely familiar. Once, there was a very handsome man who barged into her court. After seeing her, he beat her up without any explanation. She still hadn't fully recovered from the injuries on her body. Concubine Sher had sent people to take a look many times. Every time she thought of Concubine Sher saying that she had missed this banquet, missed that meeting, missed this handsome young master, missed that mighty and domineering young general, her heart felt like it was dripping blood. How many opportunities would she miss to show her face? How many opportunities would she miss to climb up the social ladder? Big brother? Chao Yingchuan's mind turned very quickly. When she heard how Mu Xingchen addressed him, she immediately understood that this person in front of her should be Aber's long-lost big brother. She hastily called out, "Big brother, don't hit big brother." "Who's your big brother?" Mu Xingchen threw her to the ground and reached out to summon a lightning talisman to strike her. Mu Jingrui, wait, Xingchen. There was one more thing. Chapter 25. Boom! A bolt of spiritual lightning struck down. Chao Yingchuan's eyes bulged, and she let out a miserable howl before falling to the ground with a thud. Shi Huixin hurried over. When she rushed in with her men, she saw a disheveled Chao Yingchun rolling back and forth on the ground, howling miserably. She was so angry that her nose was about to become crooked. After waiting for about 8 to 10 days, this woman's injuries were finally mostly healed. She originally wanted to bring her to Madame Zhongli's plum blossom banquet tomorrow and let her show her face in front of everyone, but she didn't expect to encounter this kind of incident. She quickly went up to stop Mu Xingchen and gave Nanny Zhu a look to check on Chao Yingchuan's injuries. Nanny Zhu flipped Chao Yingchun over to take a look, and her face almost became crooked from anger. Chao Yingchuan's face was as black as coal after being struck by lightning, and her entire head and face were covered in blood. She looked even more miserable than a few days ago. "Eldest young master, how could you do this? That's your younger sister. How could you be so ruthless? Even if the two of you didn't grow up together, can you bear to cut off your blood ties? You're so ruthless. Look at how badly you've beaten your younger sister." Shi Huixin was filled with anger and had nowhere to vent, so she gave Mu Xingchen a good lecture. "Someone, throw this impostor out of the Mu residence. Don't let her take half a step into the Mu residence again." Mu Xingchen didn't care about Concubine Sher's attitude and directly gave the order. 2 Mu residence's shadow guards immediately came out from behind and dragged the trembling Chao Yingchun up. "Ah! Big brother, what are you doing? Big brother!" Chao Yingchun screamed and hugged the leg of the stool tightly, unwilling to let go. Madame Li rushed in and sat on the doorstep, howling, "Oh, everyone, come and take a look. The Mu residence's eldest young master is going to chase out the young miss who was left stranded outside. Oh, there's no justice in this world. The Mu residence is committing murder and arson." "Shut up." When Mu Qingya rushed over, she saw such a mess. Madame Li sat on the doorstep and howled while slapping her feet. The eldest son, Mu Xingchen, was angered by this old woman's shrewish behavior. His handsome face turned slightly green. Seeing this situation, she was so angry that the blue veins on her forehead almost popped out. She shouted at the group of old maids accompanying her, "What are you waiting for? Why aren't you gagging this old woman and dragging her out? What are you doing? Are you guys trying to murder me for money? Ouch." Madame Li was still howling when she was slapped in the face by an older female servant. Madame Li's head was slightly tilted back and her mouth was immediately filled with the taste of blood. Chao Yingchun was also scared silly. She hurriedly pounced over to hug Concubine Sher's leg and wailed, Concubine mother, save me. Big brother can't tolerate me. Auntie, woo. I can't live anymore, auntie. Big brother wants to kill me." Shut up," Mu Qingya said angrily. "Shut up. If he were to let these shrews spout nonsense, would the young master's reputation still be intact? If word got out, people would think that even the young master of the Mu residence couldn't tolerate his biological younger sister. A cold glint shot out of Mu Xingqian's eyes, and he turned to glare at concubine Shi. Shi Huixin, I don't know what you want to do by bringing such an impostor home. But if you want to harm my younger sister, even if I don't want my life, I won't let you off. The 10th watch ended. Chapter 25-26. Concubine Shi smiled awkwardly. Look at what eldest young master is saying. Why would concubine harm eldest young master's younger sister? Look, isn't this? Don't think that everyone is a fool. Mu Xingqian flung away concubine Shi's outstretched arm and looked at her coldly. You must know very well what this woman's identity is. Shi Huixin carelessly stroked her hair and said with a smile, Eldest young master must be joking. Concubine is merely bringing Miss back from Seekong planet to reunite with our family. I don't want others to misunderstand my good intentions. In all honesty, concubine really doesn't have any selfish motives. Mu Qingya frowned and said, Concubine Shi, help Miss to the bed first. Xingqian, come with me. Mu Xingqian's handsome face was cold as he followed Mu Qingya out of Ting Lan's small courtyard. Mu Qingya sighed and turned around with a rather solemn expression. Xingqian, your actions this time were truly too reckless and impulsive. What good will this do for your reputation? If this matter were to spread, what would it look like? Those outside who don't know the truth will only think that you can't even tolerate a younger sister who has led a wandering life for many years. Mu Xingqian said angrily, How can she be my younger sister? That slut is simply an impostor. I won't admit to her identity. Mother, why is it like this? Mu Xingqian couldn't help but grumble inwardly. Why didn't concubine Shi immediately chase her out the day you brought her back? Even if others don't know, Mother should know that this person is an impostor. Xingqian. Mu Qingya shook her head and said with a wry smile, The day concubine Shi brought her back, she spoke so confidently and solemnly. She even paid a visit to your father and found 2 more witnesses to prove it. We can only discuss this matter at length. If we want to chase this impostor out of the house, we still have to find some evidence. What evidence? Wouldn't father know? Mu Xingqian sneered. Wouldn't it be clear once we take out the bloodline talisman? We'll know whether or not she's of the Mu family bloodline with a test. Mu Qingya was slightly taken aback, then she revealed an ecstatic expression. Right. Why didn't Mother think of that? That fake would naturally not be able to pass the test of the bloodline talisman. Mu Qingya said with a smile, However, I need to go to your father personally and have a good talk with him. Go back to your own courtyard first and wait for my notice. Mu Xingqian thought for a moment and nodded slightly. On the other side, Mo Lian had already finished flipping through all the fortuitous encounters of Situ Yi, Wei Nanfeng, and Yu Xiu. It had to be said that this group of people was really lucky. Coincidentally, they were picked up by the city lords of Fire Smelting City and Ice Sealed City who had gone out to train, compete, and brought back to raise them. So don't always say that Jojo is lucky. There are many people who are really lucky. From the looks of it, Jojo's little bit of luck was nothing. If the heavenly Tao was here, he would definitely give this fellow a tight slap. Bah, your little bit of luck is just short of reaching the heavens. Little bit of luck? If this is little bit of luck, then there are really no people with great luck in this world. After flipping through the information, Mo Lian looked at the recent events in Dragonflame City, big and small. When her fingers stopped at a few documents titled, The Mu Family's Wandering Girl Returns. Chapter 25-27. Mu Qiao has returned home. The Mu family's long-lost Miss Mu Qiao has finally returned home. Mo Lian's eyes could not help but narrow dangerously when her finger paused on a row of similar information. This Mu Qiao couldn't be the one he was thinking of, right? He reached out to flip open the neatly arranged information and quickly skimmed through it. Mu Estate's gilded garden. Mu Qingya carefully wrung a wet handkerchief and gently handed it to her husband, Mu Jingfeng, who was sitting beside her. A faint smile appeared on Mu Jingfeng's grave and stern face. He took the handkerchief and wiped his face before casually asking, "I heard that Xingchen went to Ting Lan's courtyard to cause trouble today?" Mu Qingya sighed. "This child is still too impulsive. I've already lectured him. Husband, don't scold him anymore. You're always protecting him." Mu Jingfeng glared at her. "He's the Mu family's young master and someone who will bear the responsibility of the entire Mu family in the future. We can't indulge him too much." Mu Qingya smiled. "Look at what you're saying, husband. Xingchen doesn't need us to worry about him. He's very sensible. There's a reason for today's matter. If it weren't for concubine Shi..." Mu Qingya could not help but bite her lip when she saw Mu Jingfeng's gaze drifting over, swallowing the latter half of her sentence. After contemplating for a while, she finally could not help but speak up again. "Husband, Xingchen suggested to me today that he wanted to use the bloodline talisman to test that young lady in Ting Lan's courtyard." Mu Jingfeng glared at her and said in displeasure, "Nonsense. You want to open the ancestral hall to ask for a bloodline talisman for such an insignificant matter?" Mu Qingya tried to persuade him, "Master, how can this be a trivial matter? This is also a major matter that will shake the ancestral bloodline. I think you've also been muddled by Xingchen's words. You believe him when he says that person isn't his younger sister? There can't be any mistake with someone brought over from Sikong planet." Mu Jingfeng casually waved his hand. "There's no need to mention this matter again. He's been running around all this time and hasn't seen any improvement in his cultivation. Tell him to go into seclusion and cultivate properly. Don't always think about those nonsensical things of the secular world." "Master, enough." Mu Jingfeng nonchalantly swung his sleeves and got up to leave. His grave and stern face was abnormally cold. An hour later, Mu Xingchen received the news. He sat in his study room and crushed a jade porcelain brush washer. "Young master, madam said that this matter cannot be rushed. She will find an opportunity to persuade the master again." The servant standing in front of the desk said with a trembling voice. This was the first time he had seen his young master so angry, as if he wanted to tear everything in front of him apart. He knew at a glance that B*TCH wasn't his daughter. Mu Xingchen said angrily. As he said, with his father's eyesight as the head of the Mu family for so many years, what could be hidden from his eyes? "Young master." The servant was almost scared to death. "He's the one who wants to keep the fake. It was him who did not want to see Jojo. That's why he didn't want to open the ancestral hall and experiment with the bloodline talisman. That coward. What did my Jojo do wrong? Why should she bear all of this?" "Young master." The servant looked like he was about to faint. Please. Could he not scold the head of the household like this in front of a tiny ant like him? Life was so precious. He really didn't want to die so early. Chapter 25-28. This man would rather raise an impostor as his daughter than see his own daughter. Mu Xingchen clenched his fists tightly and spat, "Extremely stupid." He should have known that he could only do things that the man agreed to. How could concubine Shi have the guts to bring an impostor into the Mu family? It was obvious that the man agreed to it himself. He did it on purpose, deliberately turning a blind eye and deliberately suppressing the fact that the impostor's origins were unknown. Only in this way would the Mu family not pursue the origin of the counterfeit goods and accept the existence of the counterfeit goods. Mu Xingchen was so angry that his eyes turned red. "Coward, even if you don't want to see Jojo, you don't have to make an impostor to annoy yourself. He doesn't mind spending money to raise a slut, but I do mind that the slut's existence dirties the entire court." The manservant lowered his head and completely treated himself as heir. He hoped that the young master would let him go. He didn't hear anything. "I won't let this impostor occupy my sister's position." Mu Xingchen's eyes revealed a cold glint. Young master, what are you doing?" The servant really wanted to slap his own mouth. Why the hell was he stuttering when he spoke? "Don't be a coward. He had to advise his young master not to court death. In this situation, it was obvious that he was going against the master. That was courting death. Jiangdu, what are you thinking about? Ah. The page boy looked at Mu Xingchen in confusion and hurriedly said, Young master, I am thinking of how to persuade you to put down your butcher's knife. Mu Xingchen glanced at him. Butcher's knife? Yes, yes. Don't think that I don't know. Young master, you want to sneak into Ting Lan's courtyard in the dark and directly slit that girl's throat. Mu Xingchen sneered. You know your master quite well. Why yes. The page boy hated that he couldn't slap himself again. Who asked you to speak so much and spit out everything in your heart? Young master, don't be rash. The page boy hurriedly hugged Mu Xingchen's leg and cried, Young master, let's not do such impulsive things. Ah. If the owner of Ting Lan's courtyard is dead, you will be the first suspect. After all, we just had a conflict with them. If word gets out that he's the murderer of his younger sister, his reputation won't be good either. Don't doubt it. I did it. Mu Xingchen sneered. However, when he went to Ting Lan's small courtyard again, he found that it was already empty. After careful inquiry, it turned out that the fake had been taken away by Shirin Yang to Wulong Garden to recuperate. Recuperating was just a pretense. The main reason was to prevent this fake from being killed in Ting Lan's courtyard for no reason. Mu Xingchen sneered. Concubine Shi was really worried sick about this fake. At the door of the study, a small head poked out and then shrank back. Emolienne could not help but laugh. She put down the documents in her hands and said softly, I've already seen you. Why are you still hiding? The little fellow bounced inside in a trot, and Emolienne stretched out his arms to carry her into his embrace. Hungry? The little girl nodded and looked up at him with a pair of round eyes. I really want to eat hot roasted sweet potatoes right now. Okay, I'll roast a few for you. Emolienne reached out to pinch her little nose and said with a grin, What a greedy little kitten. With a wave of her hand, she took out a small stove and 4 to 5 sweet potatoes from her inner world. Chapter 25-29. Emolienne was now completely in his element when it came to cooking. This simple roasted sweet potato was naturally very familiar to him. As long as he controlled the heat well, he could just place the sweet potato on the stove and flip it over to roast it after a while. What were you looking at just now? Sir Jojo asked curiously. He reached out to grab the information he placed on the side. Oh, is it information on Situ E and the others? Did they really go to Fire Refining City? Half and half. It was also a coincidence that they went to Fire Refining City and Icebound City, but it's also because their talents are pretty good. Abba nodded his small head. Those little fellows' talents were naturally pretty good. If they had lived in the Divine Province since birth in a place with such dense spiritual energy, their current strength would probably have broken through to great spiritualists long ago. However, they came more than half a year earlier than her, so presumably, they were no longer rookies like great mystic cultivators. At the thought of meeting them again and being able to see her little fellows rapidly improve their cultivation, Miss Chow couldn't help but faintly look forward to it. It's not information on Situ E and the others. Sir Jojo casually picked up a piece of information on Mu Chow's return, and stared at it for a while like he had seen a ghost. There was a fake who was taken back to the Mu family. Emolienne sneered and raised his hand to take the piece of information from Abba's hand before casually tossing it to the side. The Mu family is such a large family, so they definitely know whether it's their own bloodline or not. It's impossible for them to be so easily confused, unless that muddle-headed patriarch of theirs doesn't wish for me to return in the first place and would rather deceive himself by raising an impostor. Xiao Mu curled her lips coldly. Speaking of which, I don't care for that lousy Mu clan either. However, I should take back what belongs to me. Xiao Mu raised her head to look at the crown prince before leaning close to his ear and muttering. Emolienne nodded as he listened. When the old man acknowledges you in a few days, I'll have him write it when we meet. Don't worry, it won't be long before the old man gives in. Xiao Mu blinked her large eyes and nodded. Okay. The two of them chatted for a while more. After a while, Emolienne increased the heat and roasted a few sweet potatoes. The young couple was peeling the sweet potato and eating it when Zhao Tengdong's respectful voice came from outside, reporting to the Crown Prince, Crown Princess. Madame Zhong Li sent an invitation for the plum blossom meet. Auber took a bite of the sweet potato and asked curiously, "Who is it?" Emolienne's expression was indifferent as she said, "General Zhong Li's wife." She loved lively events, so every few days, she would hold a small banquet and invite all the noble ladies. If you don't want to go, then don't go. We don't have to do anything for her. Auber's eyes swiveled. Say, do you think that impostor will go? Emolienne couldn't help but be startled. He had read the detailed information, so he naturally knew that the young lady who impersonated Jojo had been violently beaten up by an unknown person the night she returned to the Mu residence. That was why she hadn't had the chance to come out after being back for so many days. She had been recuperating at home every day. With his subordinate's influence, he naturally could effortlessly find out who the person who had violently beaten up the impostor was. Of course, there was no need to let Jojo know that eldest Qin had stood up for Jojo and beaten up the impostor. Humph, there was no need for him to make a move. Logically speaking, that impostor should be attending tomorrow's plum blossom meet. Emolienne nodded. Didn't that concubine Shi from the Mu family bring her back to stir up trouble? Chapter 25-30. General Zhong Li's wife held a plum blossom banquet, and there were many noble ladies who gave face. If concubine Shi's original intention was to let the impostor replace Jojo, she would definitely not let go of this opportunity to show her face. Then I'll go. Sir Jojo nodded vigorously and said, I'll go and meet this impostor. Emolienne nodded and said, Okay, I'll go with you. You're not allowed to go. The little fellow immediately reached out to cover his mouth and blinked cleverly. You're too eye-catching, you have to hide at home. There were a bunch of women in that place. What was there to go? What was there to go? Sir Jojo was going to fight. Don't worry, he would definitely return victorious. Emolienne didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He reached out to pull down her little hand and kissed her soft little hand. Don't worry, your husband is only yours. Yours is only yours. How could this man be so flirtatious? Sir Jojo couldn't help but reach out to pinch his face. He reached out to hug him and muttered, That's right, it's mine. Emolienne couldn't help but be amused. He hugged and rubbed her for a while before saying to Zhao Tengdong, who was waiting outside the door and didn't dare to breathe loudly, Go and make arrangements. Send the crown princess to the banquet tomorrow. Yes. Zhao Tengdong immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He felt that the time he had been waiting outside the door was so long that it almost made him cry. The imperial palace, the Empress Dowager's chamber. Little Li is really dead? Empress Dowager Chen sat under the warm blanket, looking a little puzzled. This old lady was already over 70 years old. She had a round and well-maintained appearance. Compared to her real age, she was naturally at least 10 years younger. The nanny who accompanied the old lady immediately nodded when she heard this. Yes. Does the Empress Dowager want to summon that crown princess? Empress Dowager Chen pondered for a while and shook her head. Let's wait and see. The little crown princess that Emolienne brought back, regardless of whether they recognized her or not, seemed to be someone that Emolienne had set his mind on. From the looks of it, he was quite a powerful figure. As soon as he came back, he dealt with the people of the Divine Hall on the street, beat up Emo Zhuang, and then killed Little Li in front of Eunuch Li from the Imperial Household Department. SK, what an amazing person. It's said that Eunuch Li fell seriously ill after he returned. He still can't get out of bed. Sigh, how pitiful. Tell the Imperial Physician Building to send him more tonics so that he can recover. After all, the number of old people in the palace is decreasing day by day. Empress Dowager Chen said with a sigh. Empress Dowager is merciful. This servant will go and instruct them. Empress Dowager Chen nodded and took a cup of bird's nest from the palace maid. She said lightly, Baojia is immature. Go back to the Chen family and you will know what to do. Yes, this old servant will do it immediately. Please rest assured, Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Chen nodded. She tiredly waved her hand and had everyone leave, until she was the only one left in the palace. She lay there in silence for a long time. In the end, she couldn't help but scold the idiot. The Chen family was declining day by day. The children in the family were not promising in their official career or cultivation. If it weren't for her and her eldest nephew who supported the Chen family, Empress Dowager Chen sighed. She felt her body was a bit heavy. After all, she was old. She thought that if it were a few decades ago, she wouldn't be so cautious. Really, she had to admit that she was old. There were shadows outside the window. The room inside the window was silent. Chapter 25-31. It was close to noon. 6 black stallions with shiny black fur trotted across Changle Street and turned left towards Kongla Street. Every inch of this land was worth its weight in gold. Unless one was an important official or an influential family, one really did not have the financial ability to settle down in Kongla Street. To be honest, if one was not an influential family, they would not be able to afford to live in Kongla Street. Therefore, Zhongli's residence was able to occupy the most eye-catching location on Kongla Street. The residence was 3 to 4 times the size of the other residences. Compared to the residences of the princes on Chonglu South Street, it wasn't inferior at all. When the Eastern Palace's carriage appeared in front of everyone, it caused a small commotion. When the people of Zhongli's residence received the news, they immediately went out to welcome them and arranged for the Eastern Palace's carriage to enter the residence directly and not stop outside. The person who came to welcome the carriage was Zhongli eldest young madam, the eldest daughter-in-law of great General Zhongli. She led 2 rows of servants and very respectfully welcomed the Eastern Palace's carriage into the residence. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the inner courtyard. Aber did not need anyone's help and walked down the carriage on her own. Her quiet gaze fell on the dignified and elegant eldest young madam at the front. Zhongli eldest young madam led the servants to kneel in greeting and said with a smile, "The Crown Princess has graced our humble abode with your presence. Your presence brings light to our humble abode." Seeing that she was still polite, Miss Chow suppressed her thoughts of picking a fight with her. If you obediently don't find trouble with Jojo, Jojo will not find trouble with you." Zhongli eldest young madam unexpectedly raised her eyes to look at the Crown Princess and could not help but suppress her stunned expression. The little Crown Princess in front of her was really too cold and elegant, with a hint of playfulness amidst her elegance. With 2 symmetrical buns on her head, she looked like a little paralyzed and adorable. Under her scarlet cloak, the red brocade collar wrapped around her slender little neck and blended her fair and jade-like face with the fluffy fur. She was really very beautiful. Xiao Mu waved her hand to have them stand up, and then she trotted into the main hall. Eldest young madam personally led the way and said with a smile, "Mother-in-law originally wanted to personally welcome Her Highness the Crown Princess, but your imperial aunt, Qin Wang Fei, just happened to enter the Fu, so mother-in-law really couldn't leave." Abba nodded and had no intention of making trouble. The host was holding a banquet to admire the plum blossoms, so naturally he had invited all the princes and madams of the influential families in the city. It was inevitable that they would be busy with welcoming the guests, so there was nothing much to say. Moreover, this Zhongli manor could be considered to have done things properly. Sending the great general's eldest daughter-in-law to welcome her was not considered a slight. Madame Zhongli was 7 or 8 years older than the Crown Princess. She thought that young people would have more topics to talk about when they were together. Who knew that the Crown Princess was a stoic person of few words? Come to think of it, no matter who the facial paralysis was, they didn't have much to talk about. Thinking back to when she was a fake servant girl in the Qin estate, wasn't she also not very popular? "I don't understand why he's so unpopular." Sir Jojo wrinkled his small nose. On the side, however, eldest young madam's heart was beating like a drum. Looking at the little stoic's cold face, her mood was a bit perturbed. The Crown Princess was unhappy? "The Crown Princess has arrived." After the announcement was made outside the door, the hall fell into a uniform silence. The stoic face expressionlessly walked in through the door, and the gazes of the several people sitting in the hall uniformly turned towards her. What a little beauty with a jade-like face and pearl-like skin that could be broken by the slightest breeze. Chapter 25-32. The eyes of the women in the hall, each with their own thoughts, flickered a few times. As the madam of the main household, Madame Zhongli was respectfully accompanying Princess Consort Kong. When she saw the young crown princess enter, she hastily stood up and saluted. Greetings to the crown princess. Accompanying Arbor into the main hall were Aunt Jing, Caixiu, and Caiqi. At this time, Caixiu and Caiqi curtsied and stood to the side. Aunt Jing stepped forward and whispered to Arbor, "This is Great General Zhongli's wife." Arbor glanced indifferently at Madame Zhongli and nodded. With her status, there was no need for her to return the greeting to Madame Zhongli. "That is Princess Consort Kong, His Highness the Crown Prince, and your imperial aunt." Arbor looked at Princess Consort Kong curiously. She could be considered to have a good understanding of the Mo family's current imperial relatives. According to the relationship chart Mo Lien gave her, the one who had the closest relationship with the emperor was this Prince Kong. Nowadays, the emperor entrusted Prince Kong to handle major court affairs and matters that needed to be handled personally. He greatly relied on and trusted this elder brother of his. Prince Kong was the emperor's eldest brother, so according to seniority, he was naturally her and the crown prince's imperial uncle. And this plump and somewhat unhealthy royal consort in front of her was her imperial aunt. Arbor blinked. On the other hand, Princess Consort Kong couldn't sit still anymore. She and Prince Kong had no children in their entire lives. Later on, they adopted a daughter born by her maternal sister-in-law, but she wasn't to her liking. When she saw the little stoic for the first time today, she thought she was incredibly adorable. This child was simply too lovable. This was that child Mo Lien's wife? Good job, good job. She was so much better than that domineering woman his father found for him. This little fellow looked like a soft and adorable little bun at first glance. Ayaya, she was truly adorable. The two small bags on her head were matched with two simple and generous pink beaded flowers. It was bright and beautiful to the point that it was just right. She didn't have any extra accessories on her head. She looked good, she looked really good. When Princess Consort Kong saw the little stoic, she found her especially pleasing to the eye, and a smile involuntarily spilled onto her chubby face. Come, come. Come here, come here. Aunt Jing was stunned. She was naturally familiar with this Princess Consort Kong. For female officials like them who worked in the palace, even if they didn't know the temperament of the members of the imperial family like the back of their hand, they had more or less heard about it. For example, this Princess Consort Kong usually did not like to get close to people. Don't be fooled by her smiling face, she was actually very unapproachable. Many noble ladies wanted to flatter her. After all, Prince Kong was the most powerful official in the court. But not everyone was able to gain Princess Kang's favor. Now, when the little crown princess walked in, she didn't even say a word, but Princess Kong took notice of her. It can't be. Everyone silently muttered in their minds. When they turned their heads to look, they saw the little crown princess pattering over to Princess Consort Kong with small steps. When Princess Consort Kong took a closer look, she became even more attracted to her. This little fellow's small appearance was too good-looking. Looking at that sparkling small face and those spirited pitch-black eyes, says, where did Mo Lien pick up this little wifey from? It couldn't be that he had run into an enormous stroke of luck, right? Princess Consort Kong grabbed Arbor's small hand and said with a grin, "Good child, I'm your imperial aunt. This is our first meeting, and imperial aunt doesn't have anything good on her, so you can wear this for fun." Chapter 25-33. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. Princess Consort Kong was being too modest. She had given a rare treasure like the exquisite fire brocade bracelet to the little crown princess to play with, and she still called it nothing good. Everyone knew that Princess Consort Kong had a cold constitution since she was young. This exquisite fire brocade bracelet was a protective bracelet that the old prince had found a master craftsman to make after traveling all over the country. It was a fire elemental defensive artifact, and it had the function of warming the body when worn. More importantly, this bracelet was a space bracelet. Because Princess Consort Kong was an ordinary woman without any cultivation or spiritual sense, the old prince had spent a lot of effort to find a special material to add to the exquisite fire brocade bracelet so that it could be used by her. Therefore, ordinary people could also use this defensive artifact and open a space, but the princess consort could not form a contract with it. But now, Princess Consort Kong had actually given a divine artifact to the little crown princess, whom she had just met, without batting an eye. Wasn't this too exaggerated? According to the norm, the little crown princess should be blushing modestly and giving in a little, right? Jealousy flashed through the eyes of a young girl sitting below Princess Consort Kong. She felt as if she was sitting on pins and needles. Her buttocks twisted slightly on the stool, and she bit her pale lips, looking like she wanted to say something but stopped herself. However, what made everyone's jaws drop was the little crown princess had actually reached out to receive the gift so openly, and then very naturally put it on her little hand. Since the exquisite fire brocade bracelet was a divine artifact, it had the ability to stretch and shrink. The moment it was in her hand, it fit her wrist. And the next thing that made everyone's eyes pop out of their sockets was the little crown princess had actually dripped her blood into her spiritual sense, and very smoothly formed a contract with the exquisite fire brocade bracelet. Haha. Her actions were so damn fast. The exquisite fire brocade bracelet space was really not small. It even contained some of the princess consort's personal collections, such as antiques, calligraphy, paintings, jewelry, jade, and so on. There was also a small mountain of spirit coins piled up. At a glance, there were probably tens of millions. Jojo inexplicably felt happy, as if he had made a small fortune. Strange. Why would Jojo be interested in such a small amount of money? The girl sitting below Princess Kong immediately jumped up from her stool and pointed at Auber as she screamed angrily, "Rude. You, how dare you? You actually contracted with the exquisite fire brocade bracelet?" Princess Consort Kang's smiling face instantly froze. She turned to sweep a glance at the long-faced girl and said with a frosty expression, "Shut up. Since the bracelet was given to the crown princess, it naturally belonged to the crown princess. Wasn't it normal to have a contract? Iran, you're really becoming more and more unruly. Sit down." Lu Iran bit her lips and sat down with a twisted and resentful face. Her hands twisted the silk handkerchief as if she wanted to tear it apart. Princess Consort Kong glared at her fiercely, thinking to herself, as expected, she's not presentable. Didn't he usually reward her with a lot of things? This small family was very much like a sister-in-law, wanting to take all the good things. The little crown princess merely cast a glance at Lu Iran, then treated her as heir and let her go. She took out a palm-sized square box from her inner world and handed it over to Princess Consort Kong. "What is it?" Princess Consort Kong stared blankly, then couldn't help but smile. "A gift in return for the elders." The little crown princess spoke for the first time since she entered the family. Princess Consort Kong was over the moon from the little fellow's coaxing. However, the other people in the room had mixed feelings. Chapter 25-34. Ha 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 ha. Princess Consort Kong laughed heartily as she held Auber's little hand and rubbed it lovingly. "Little fellow, you're really a good child. Our Emolien is truly fortunate to be able to marry you." Auber nodded her little head in full agreement. She felt that Princess Consort Kang's taste was especially good. She herself also felt that she was pretty good. Lien was truly very fortunate to be able to marry her. The old and the young chatted happily there. Most of the time, it was Princess Consort Kong who was talking alone. The little crown princess asked her 18 questions, and she would pick one or two and answer simply with 4 or 5 words. The strange thing was that the two of them could actually continue chatting in this kind of chatting mode. If it were anyone else, they would have died from the conversation long ago. On the side, Lu Iran was so angry that she was about to vomit blood. She kept cursing Princess Consort Kong, this old thing, in her heart. She had waited on this old thing day and night in vain. She had asked for the space bracelet hundreds of times but failed to get it. Yet, this old thing had so easily given it to a woman she had just met. Lu Iran's lungs were about to explode from anger. She felt aggrieved and resentful in her heart. She sat on the side like a vengeful spirit, glaring at Arbor with her glowing white eyes. If looks could kill people, Lu Iran would have already shot her thousands of poisonous glares and killed the little girl. Madame Zhongli interrupted with a smile at the right time. Princess Consort Kong and the Crown Princess really hit it off at first sight. That's right, that's right. Princess Consort Kang's attitude towards Madame Zhongli wasn't bad. She wasn't particularly distant and cold, nor was she very affectionate. It was just a formality. Now that she saw Madame Zhongli speak, Princess Consort Kong said proudly, "Look at how good this daughter-in-law that our Emolien found. She has the looks and temperament. She doesn't lack in cultivation or intelligence." Everyone, Princess Consort Kong, aren't you bragging a bit too much? She does have the looks and temperament, but how can you judge this girl's intelligence when you've only interacted with her for less than a quarter of an hour? Furthermore, this little crown princess's cultivation wasn't particularly high. At a glance, he looked like a low-level spirit master. Was his cultivation high? But then again, as the high and mighty crown princess, there was actually no need for her to cultivate. After all, there were secret guards protecting her wherever she went. Everyone thought to themselves as they glanced at the little crown princess. It was truly difficult for Princess Consort Kong to continue chatting so eloquently in front of such an expressionless, paralyzed face. Jojo-sama was the kind of person who, if you insisted on chatting with her, would continue to chat with you politely. Even though she only exchanged a few words with others. "I'll call you Jojo from now on. Jojo, if our Emolien bullies you in the future, feel free to tell Imperial Aunt. Imperial Aunt will take care of him for you. Imperial Aunt will definitely stand by your side." Jojo thought about it seriously. He can't bully me. It had always been Lord Jojo who bullied him. Jojo-sama was Lien's little emperor baby. Wasn't it normal for him to listen to Lord Jojo's words and actions? It was impossible for him to bully the little emperor. However, not long after he said this, Lord Jojo had the urge to cry. As expected, he couldn't be too full of himself, because retribution would arrive in minutes. Lord Jojo would soon be slapped in the face. Chapter 25-35. Jojo and Princess Consort Kong had a warm chat for a while until the servants came to report that Princess Consort Zhang had arrived. Only then did everyone let out a slight sigh of relief. They wiped the sweat from their foreheads and thought to themselves, F***K, we finally don't have to listen to the awkward conversation between Princess Consort Kong and the Crown Princess. That's really F***King enough. What are they talking about? When women gather together, shouldn't they be talking about which jewelry store opened in the capital? What kind of beautifying dishes did Kai Dai Veranda come out with? Shouldn't it be like this? Look at how Princess Consort Kong and the Crown Princess were awkwardly chatting about all sorts of things. Their thoughts were flying too fast. Princess Consort Zhang held a woman's hand and walked in together intimately. Everyone felt that it was a bit strange. Everyone knew that Princess Consort Zhang's appearance was average. Moreover, her forehead was narrow and slightly sunken. Her nose was sharp and narrow, but her mouth wasn't small. Saying that her appearance was average was a bit of a compliment. Actually, she was just a bit ugly. Princess Consort Zhang's naturally harsh and merciless appearance usually attracted a lot of gossip for her. What she disliked the most in her life was walking together with beautiful girls. But today, the girl beside her was graceful and elegant. She was wearing a long white dress that wrapped around her chest, which made her skin look as delicate as milk. Arbor looked at them coldly. To be precise, she was looking at the girl beside Princess Consort Zhang, on the top of her head. She recognized this hairpin. It should be said that she had a very deep impression of this hairpin. This 5-fortune jade hairpin was Shi Yongqian's favorite. She wore it every day and couldn't part with it no matter where she went. Arbor clenched her fists tightly. Her gaze was cold as she stared at the girl in white fluttering clothes in front of her. Shi Yongqian. Long time no see. I'm back. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Shi Yongqian felt like she was being stared at by a poisonous snake. Her long brows furrowed slightly. She inadvertently raised her head and looked in the direction of that sharp gaze. What entered her sight was a young girl who was as delicate as jade porcelain. When she saw the young girl's appearance, she couldn't help but be slightly dazzled. Shi Yongqian originally thought that she was fair and beautiful enough, and her skin was delicate enough, but it turned out that there was no comparison at all. Now that she stood in front of the little girl, she was immediately outshone. The beauty and milk-white skin that she was so proud of was not even worth mentioning in front of this little girl. Shi Yongqian took a deep breath and did her best to maintain a smiling appearance. Following Princess Consort Zheng's bow to Princess Consort Kong, the two sisters said in a soft voice, "Greetings to Princess Consort Kong." Princess Consort Kong nodded and had them rise out of unfamiliarity. She then held Qiao Mu's hand, and her expression turned into one of familiarity and intimacy. "Child, meet your sister-in-law, Princess Consort Zheng. Her husband, King Zheng, is the adopted son of the great emperor. His name is Mo Shikong. This should be the first time the two of you have met. Greetings, Crown Princess." Princess Consort Zheng's eyes flickered slightly as she greeted her with a smile. "Greetings, Zheng Wangfei." Since Princess Consort Zheng was her sister-in-law in name, Arbor naturally wouldn't let her perform a full salute to avoid giving people an excuse for being arrogant and rude, which would give people a reason to gossip. Arbor stepped forward and also returned a half salute. "Greetings, Crown Princess." Shi Yongqian, who was at the side, also hurriedly followed suit and curtsied. However, she had always been conceited about her family background and had an extremely arrogant personality. She automatically straightened up after squatting for less than half a second. This kind of salute was merely a formality. Generally, no one would make things difficult for a noble daughter of an aristocratic family. "Who knew? Who allowed you to stand up?" 10 o'clock. Chapter 25-36. Shi Yongqian was taken aback. She almost suspected that the Crown Princess was talking to her. The Crown Princess actually used such an icy tone to talk about her, the Shi family's second miss? Ignorant of etiquette. Arbor said coldly, "Caixio, teach her." Caixio immediately walked up and demonstrated a salute. "Greetings to the Crown Princess." The young Crown Princess nodded and gestured for Caixio to stand up. She then turned to look at the stupefied Shi Yongqian. "Unruly. Start over." Everyone. Princess Consort Kong silently stifled her laughter and tried wiping her lips with a handkerchief. She chuckled softly and said, "Second Miss Shi, the Crown Princess is talking to you. Why aren't you responding? You really don't know etiquette." Shi Yongqian's charming face flushed red, and she looked incredulously at the Crown Princess who was looking directly at her. The young Crown Princess had slapped her left cheek in front of all the madams and noble ladies, then slapped her right cheek with the back of her hand. Shi Yongqian's back stiffened as she stood motionlessly in front of the little stoic. Most of the people in the hall were also silently watching the show. At this moment, the sounds of whispering increased. Most of the people who could sit with Princess Consort Kong in this main hall were madams with status in the royal court. Their husbands' family's power was ranked among the top in the imperial capital. These women were mostly slick and sly. Seeing that this second Miss Shi had somehow offended the young Crown Princess and was targeted by her, how could she possibly say something to draw hatred? Moreover, this Shi family was ranked last among the 6 great patrician families, but they were very high profile in their conduct. They tried to curry favor with the powerful and had unclear connections with the royal court, so they were very disliked. Not only did they rush to marry their eldest daughter, Shi Yongyan, to Zheng Wang as a consort, but they also repeatedly used Zheng Wang's name to secretly deal with some disobedient courtiers. She really didn't know how this family could stretch their hands so far. Shi Yongqian saw that no one was speaking up for her, and Princess Consort Zhang standing next to her was completely stunned. She couldn't help but bite her lips in grievance. She bowed and said, "How did my daughter offend the Crown Princess to cause the Crown Princess to treat my daughter like this?" The young Crown Princess didn't reply. She just stared coldly at the woman in front of her. In his previous life, she was such a high-spirited woman. Now, she actually revealed such a timid appearance like a little white rabbit. He really knew how to act. If he didn't know what kind of personality this woman had, he would have really been deceived by her. In this life, they met several years earlier. At this time, Shi Yongqian was only a 17-year-old girl. Compared to her ruthless and arbitrary style in his previous life, she was much more tender. Arbor slightly pursed his lips and swept a glance at Shi Yongqian's uneasy face. He turned and helped Princess Consort Kong sit down, and he also sat down next to her. Shi Yongqian gritted her teeth and half-squatted, maintaining a saluting posture. However, her fingertips had already pierced into her palms. What a domineering and rude crown princess! She had just returned to the capital, yet she was like a shrew, stirring up trouble everywhere. The emperor hadn't even acknowledged her status, yet she dared to be so shameless as to put on airs and punish her? She really wanted to see when this bearing fangs and brandishing claws woman would fall from the crown princess divine altar. If such a day came, Shi Yongqian tightly gritted her teeth. That day would be the day she took revenge and consigned this woman to eternal damnation. "Miss Shi, are you cursing this crown princess by gritting your teeth?" Chapter 25-37. Shi Yongqian's expression stiffened, and she crouched there, feeling extremely uncomfortable all over. The little stoic sat there and gazed at her coldly. "As expected, your Shi family is quite capable. You don't even respect the Eastern Palace. Then presumably, His Majesty is nothing more than this in your hearts." Shi Yongqian's heart abruptly chilled, and Princess Consort Zhang, who was snickering on the side, couldn't help but stiffen. She hastily walked up and said with a smile, "The Crown Princess really knows how to joke. Yongqian is young and doesn't know proper etiquette. I hope that the Crown Princess won't take offense." "How old?" Princess Consort Zhang couldn't help but be stunned. Why did she feel like this little Crown Princess's thoughts were jumping around? She almost couldn't keep up with her speech patterns. 17 years old. Yongqian is only 17 years old after all. This Crown Princess is 15 years old. Everyone, the madams who didn't have a good relationship with the Shi family all along, couldn't help but snigger. They really wanted to ask Princess Consort Zhang if this slap in the face was fast. She had just said she was young, but who would have expected that the little Crown Princess was even younger? Even though she was young, she still couldn't disregard proper etiquette. The little Crown Princess's meaning was very clear. The little Crown Princess maintained her small face and said dryly, "Age doesn't represent everything. Many times, it really isn't easy to continue teaching when one's foundation is crooked. For example, your Shi family." She mocked coldly, "It can be seen from this miss that your upbringing is truly lacking." Everyone, Shi Yongqian was so infuriated that her nose was about to become crooked. How could she endure it now? She suddenly straightened her body. "Crown Princess, are you taking advantage of your position to bully others?" However, when she abruptly stood up from her crouching position, Shi Yongqian's legs turned to jelly, and she involuntarily swayed. Qiao Mu suddenly flared up, slapping the small sandalwood table next to her with a backhand. Her charming face was as cold as a frosty snowy night as she expressionlessly asked, "Where are the Crown Prince Consort's personal guards?" Aunt Jing's eyelids twitched violently. Ever since the young Crown Princess had made things difficult for second Miss Shi, she had felt that things were developing in a strange direction. As expected. It hasn't even been 3 minutes. Then something happened. Bang bang bang. A few large holes suddenly appeared on the roof, and 7 or 8 figures flew down from above. They knelt on one knee in front of the crown princess and said respectfully in unison, "Here." Madame Zhong Li hurriedly stood up with the young madam's help. The corner of her mouth twitched twice. The rest of the people also had a dumbfounded expression as they looked at these elite guards who suddenly jumped down from the roof. Could it be that these people had been guarding the crown princess all this time? Was it the crown prince's men? "Tie her up." Abba pointed at Shi Yongqian and said with a cold gaze, "Second Miss Shi has lost her composure in front of the crown princess. She is impolite and immoral. Drag her out and give her 10 lashes to clear her head." Everyone, Shi Yongqian was really anxious this time. When she saw the guards rushing up to tie her up, she couldn't help but put up a strong front and said, "How dare you? See if I dare or not." Abba smirked coldly. When she stared at her, Shi Yongqian felt that this young crown princess seemed to have a trace of abnormality. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she felt that the young crown princess was like a venomous snake that could pounce on her at any time and bite her throat. "Let me go! Let me go!" Shi Yongqian struggled and exclaimed, Eldest sister, save me." Chapter 25:38. A trace of hesitation flashed across Princess Consort Zheng's face. She had never liked this second sister of hers, but now that the two sisters represented the Shi family's reputation, leaving her in the lurch would only make others think that she was cold-hearted. She would definitely be in a bad mood if those gossipy women gossiped about her. Princess Consort Zheng frowned. She slightly eased that sharp and unkind expression of hers and forced a smile as she said to Abba, "Crown Princess, my younger sister was too agitated just now, that's why her words were so extreme and offended the Crown Princess. Please be magnanimous and forgive her." Sir Jojo coldly replied, "I don't want to be magnanimous." Everyone. What was going on? The little Crown Princess looked like she was going to spit on the heavens and earth the moment she entered the room, and without any warning, she started attacking that unlucky second miss of the Shi family. Yet Princess Consort Kong couldn't help but laugh out loud. She thought to herself, "This really is a soft and adorable little bun. Look, even when she's angry, she's especially interesting." Princess Consort Zheng's expression also turned ugly. She said with a cold face, "Although you are the crown princess, we have always been in China. But in our divine continent, we have always been somewhat tolerant of the strong. My second sister, Yongqian, is at least a 5th-level spiritual master with a 5th-level spiritual fire." Princess Consort Zhang harumphed and said, "In our divine continent, it's not easy for females to cultivate. My second sister's talent can be considered pretty good." Abba rolled her eyes. "What are you rambling on about? Drag her out. Beat her." The most annoying thing was to talk for so long without getting to the main point. Who has the patience to listen to you blabber on? Do you think you're a flower that needs to bloom? Everyone was dumbfounded. Did the little crown princess really not understand, or was she pretending not to? Wasn't Princess Consort Zheng talking to her about some customary rules in the divine continent? Generally, divine realm experts above the 10th level were exempted from kneeling in front of the emperor. Of course, this Shi Yongqian was only a 5th-level spiritual master. Sorry, she was thousands of miles away from being a great divine master. Although Princess Consort Zheng was a bit nonsensical, this little crown princess in front of them clearly wasn't someone who followed the rules. They really wanted to ask, what kind of family could raise such a freak? How could Shi Yongqian be a match for the crown prince's guards? What level 5 soul master? In front of a row of level 10 great soul masters, she definitely wouldn't be able to resist. In addition, Shi Yongqian had always been a prideful person in front of others. She wouldn't easily get into a fight and ruin her image. Hence, the two crown prince's personal guards easily subdued second Miss Shi. They took out hemp ropes from their inner worlds and tied the second young miss up. Then, they dragged her out of the door. This unforeseen event happened too quickly. By the time Shi Yongyan regained her senses, her second sister had already been dragged to the door. Shi Yongyan's harsh face immediately contorted. She shouted at the top of her lungs, How dare you? Arbor looked at her as if she was an idiot. What was there to be afraid of? Wasn't it already being done? Was there something wrong with this princess consort Zheng's eyesight, or was there something wrong with her brain? Why did she keep asking such retarded questions? Princess consort Zhang was about to be angered to death by the little stoic. She really had never seen such an arrogant and unreasonable person. She was actually the crown princess? Oh, my heavens! Princess consort Zhang rolled her eyes fiercely in her mind. If Sir Jojo knew, he would definitely slap her to death. What arrogant and unreasonable nonsense! Sir Jojo was the most reasonable little lady in the world. Chapter 2539. Eldest Sister, Save Me, Eldest Sister. Shi Yongqian was a little scared now, and she kept shooting looks at Princess Consort Zheng. Princess Consort Zhang looked back at the direction she was winking at and quickly said to Madame Zhongli, "Madame Zhongli, if anything happens to my second sister in your residence." What she meant was that even if they couldn't find trouble with the Eastern Palace, the Shi family could still find trouble with the Zhongli residence. Madame Zhongli's expression changed slightly, and she glared at Princess Consort Zhang rather angrily. Princess Consort Zhang was a classic example of biting at anyone she saw. Dragging people down with her? However, the Zhongli residence wasn't to be trifled with. Princess Consort Zhang smiled at Madame Zhongli. Madame Zhongli thought for a moment, then quickly stepped forward and bowed to Arbor. "Crown Princess, it was just a small misunderstanding just now. What do you think? Should we let second Miss off the hook? After all, if word of this spreads that you, the Crown Princess, reprimanded second Miss Shi in our Zhongli residence, it won't be good for the Crown Princess reputation. If word got out that the Crown Princess of the Eastern Palace was bossy, domineering, and unreasonable, it naturally wouldn't be good for her reputation." Although her words were reasonable, there was a hint of threat in them. Lord Qiao Qiao's cold and silent gaze swept over that Madame Zhongli. A cold smile that didn't seem like a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "I believe that everyone knows about this Crown Prince Consort's actions on Changle Street the moment I entered the capital yesterday. Are there any rumors today?" Everyone in the noble circle knew about what happened on Changle Street. They all knew that the little Crown Princess wasn't someone to be trifled with. What was both unexpected and expected was that not a single rumor dared to circulate in the capital today. "I even dared to teach the saintess of the temple a lesson. Do you think I wouldn't dare to teach this insignificant second miss of the Shi family a lesson?" Everyone was instantly speechless. 30 lashes. If you dare to utter another word, you'll add 10 more lashes. Arbor casually found a suitable whip from her inner world and threw it to the guard. Hit! With the sound of a gust of wind, the whip landed on second young Mistress Shi's body with a whoosh, causing her to let out a heart-wrenching scream. You dare to hit me? You dare to hit me?" Shi Yongqian's eyes widened in disbelief as she glared at Arbor. She didn't know if her eyes were playing tricks on her, but she clearly saw a trace of coldness and satisfaction in the little Crown Princess' eyes the moment the whip fell. She actually enjoyed watching him get beaten up? This person must be a pervert. The Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace actually married such a vicious and twisted psychopath. She really wanted to tear this woman apart. However, his body was tied to the tree, and his spiritual energy was suppressed by someone else. There was no room for resistance, and he didn't even have the ability to use his spiritual energy to protect his body. When the whip landed on her body, it was as if it was lashing her heart, her lungs, and her internal organs. "Ah!" Shi Yongqian screamed. Her scream was so tragic that it startled some of the noble ladies who were playing in the garden. The left Prime Minister's wife had just arrived at the entrance of Zhongli's residence and alighted from the carriage when she heard such a shocking scream. The sound seemed to have come from the main courtyard. She raised her head to look in that direction and couldn't help but frown. What was going on? The servant who welcomed the guests seemed a little embarrassed. She hurriedly covered it up and led Madame Chan and Miss Chen into the courtyard. "Baojia, don't be so willful anymore," Madame Chen exhorted. Chapter 2540. There was a sweet smile on Chen Baojia's pretty little face as she held her mother's hand and said coquettishly, "Mother, what are you talking about? You make it sound like I'm causing trouble all the time." Sigh. Madam Chen sighed. "You have to take what your grandaunt told Mama to warn you yesterday to heart, okay? There are some people that we can't casually deal with." Madam Chen said seriously, "Don't make trouble for the Chen estate and your father." Chen Baojia was still smiling and nodding her little head repeatedly, looking extremely obedient. Madam Chen had just arrived at the entrance of the inner courtyard with her daughter when they saw a smiling woman leading two girls towards them. Madam Chen. Concubine Shi smiled and bowed to the left Prime Minister's wife. Madam Chen couldn't help but be startled. "Why are you here? Where's your Madam Mu?" Shi Huixin's face tightened, and she secretly suppressed the anger that was surging up. She said with a fake smile, "Madam had a headache early this morning, so Huixin brought the two children over to join in the fun." Madam Chen nodded and didn't say anything else. She pulled her daughter and walked past Shi Huixin. Shi Huixin was even more dissatisfied. She knew that these so-called official wives looked down on her, who was born as a concubine, but was this what she wanted? Although she was born in the Shi family, one of the 6 great aristocratic families, she was only a concubine's daughter from the 3rd branch after all. She had already racked her brains to find a good marriage for herself. With her status, it was naturally impossible for her to marry into the Mu estate as the official wife. But what if that woman, Mu Qingya, happened to die of illness? Then whether she had the chance to be promoted to the official wife was another matter. If one day she became the wife of the Mu estate's master, gritting her teeth, Concubine Shi forced a smile and followed Madam Chen and her daughter into the main courtyard. The moment they stepped into the courtyard, the smell of fresh blood wafted into their noses. Madam Chen and Shi Huixin couldn't help but be stunned. When the two saw the situation in the courtyard, they were even more stunned. Weren't they here to attend the plum blossom banquet? Why was there such a bloody scene? "Mother, it seems to be cousin." Mu Royun tugged at Shi Huixin's sleeve in shock and pointed at the woman who was tied under the tree in the courtyard. Her head was drooping and her body was covered in whip wounds. "What?" Shi Huixin was shocked. She raised her head to take a closer look, and her heart skipped a beat. Was it really the second daughter of the 1st branch, Shi Yongqian? TSK. The arrogant second young mistress of the 1st branch would also have such a day? What a joke. Her relationship with the 1st branch had never been good, so she naturally had no intention of helping. In any case, she was just a lowly concubine mother and couldn't be of much help. The purpose of her visit today was mainly to bring Chao Ying-chun to broaden her horizons and see more of the clan relatives and influential officials. She didn't have to act like a country bumpkin entering the city all day long. A thought flashed through Shi Huixin's mind, and she reached out to pull over Chao Ying-chun, who had been cowering behind her the entire time and whose eyes kept darting around. She took a few steps forward and smiled at Madame Zhongli, whose expression was unsightly. Mu Estate's Shi Huixin greets Madame Zhongli. Madame Zhongli swept her a glance. She was feeling vexed, so her attitude was a bit irritated. All right. No need to be so courteous. Stay at the side." Madame Zhongli had seen this concubine Shi a few times. She was very good at currying favor. She usually didn't find her very annoying, but today, she felt that she was a bit of an eyesore. Chapter 2541. Can't you tell that I'm vexed by this unpresentable thing? Shi Huixin quickly put on a fawning smile and pulled Chao Ying-chun to her side. She said to Madame Zhongli with a smile, "Madam, let me introduce you. This is the young lady our Mu family found not long ago after wandering outside for many years. Her name is Mu Chao. Madam, please meet her. Jojo, hurry up and greet Madam." Madame Zhongli's sword-like gaze shot towards Chao Ying-chun and Shi Huixin. She was racking her brains to deal with the matter of the Shi family's second young lady. How could she have the leisure to listen to Shi Huixin's nonsense and meet the Mu family's long-lost daughter? What the hell did the Mu family's long-lost daughter have to do with her? This concubine sure just had to come up with such a critical juncture and forcefully introduce her. Was this how concubine She's brain worked? Wasn't it too funny to act like this? Chao Ying-chun was intimidated by Madame Zhongli's aura. She was so frightened that her legs went limp and she fell to the ground. She trembled as she kowtowed and shouted, "Mu Chao greets Madame Zhongli. Mu Chao greets Madame Zhongli." Everyone was speechless. What kind of situation was this? Didn't concubine Shi introduce her as the Mu family's young lady? Why was she acting like a soft-footed shrimp that couldn't be presentable and bowing so respectfully to Madame Zhongli? It was laughable to not know etiquette, but excessive etiquette was even more laughable. Chen Baojia giggled while covering her handkerchief. Mu Royun, who was standing to the side, was also stunned. Then, her face flushed red from embarrassment. She wanted nothing more than to kick this shameless thing to death. Concubine Shi didn't get angry. Instead, the smile on her face deepened. The more Mu Chao, this unpresentable thing, became famous and spread in the imperial capital, the better it was for her, right? Madame Zhongli was stunned. She glanced disdainfully at Chao Ying-chun on the ground. She secretly despised her, but she put on an amiable expression. "Miss Mu, you don't have to be so respectful. You should quickly get up." Chao Ying-chun was so panicked that she broke out in cold sweat. She knelt on the ground and turned her head to glance at concubine Shi. Seeing concubine Shi nod at her with a smile, Chao Ying-chun finally let out a sigh of relief. Her legs were weak as she struggled to prop herself up. Madame Zhongli looked down on her even more, but she didn't show it on her face. Instead, she said gently, "Miss Mu, please go to the side first." Chao Ying-chun nodded. In an instant, he seemed to have sensed something. Chao Ying-chun only felt a gust of cold wind blow past her neck. She suddenly turned her head and met a pair of dark eyes. The little girl seemed to be baring her fangs at her, and she was so shocked that she took a few steps back. When he took a closer look, there were no fangs. The stoic face was currently looking at her with a tranquil expression, faint traces of mockery and ridicule hanging from the corners of her lips. Chao Ying-chun felt as if she had run 700 to 800 meters, and her heart started to pound uncontrollably. Her pupils suddenly shrank, and she subconsciously took 2 steps back, forcefully suppressing the scream that was about to burst out of her throat. Why was she here? Why is that damned girl Auber here? She wouldn't forget this damned stoic face even if she died. It was this damned girl who opposed her at every turn. Ever since she was young, she wanted to snatch everything from her. She wanted to snatch everything from her. She didn't have the slightest bit of respect for her older sister. This selfish woman, why did she come to the divine province? She couldn't be here to snatch away her identity as a miss of the Mu family and snatch away the happy life that belonged to her, right? Chapter 2542. She thought about how she might wake up from her beautiful dream in the blink of an eye. The moment she woke up, she might return to Kwoto village, that ghastly and eerie place filled with a terrifying aura. She would have to accompany her mother and Song-er to gnaw on tree bark and roast loaches. She couldn't help but feel nauseous, and her entire body started trembling. "Why are you glaring at me?" Chao Ying-chun suddenly launched an attack, pointing a finger at Auber. Everyone was flabbergasted. What was going on? Was there something wrong with this Mu residence's young lady's brain? What kind of lunatic was she to actually pick a fight with the young crown princess? You didn't see the terrifying scene of the young crown princess picking a fight with the Shi family's second young lady just now, right? If you didn't see it, then you're out of luck. Of all the people she could pick a fight with, she just had to pick a fight with the crown princess. If she wasn't crazy, then what was? Auber suddenly revealed a faint smile at her. It was really, really, really faint. But in Chao Ying-chun's eyes, it was as if a life-reaping king of hell was waving at her. Like a lioness protecting her food, she pounced at Auber, wanting to press her to the ground and tear her apart. "Everyone, what happened? Where am I?" Looks like this Mu Residence's young lady isn't crazy. She's probably beyond cure. She was actually so stupid as to pounce on the crown princess? Who gave her the guts to be so arrogant? Although more than half of the people present didn't think highly of this crown princess, it was already an indisputable fact that the crown prince married the crown princess in the lower star domain. No matter what they thought, they had to at least put up a decent front. But was this Mu Residence's young lady having a stroke in her head? Or was she suddenly possessed? Shi Huixin was also dumbfounded. She wanted to bring Qiao Ying-chun out to meet people, so the more stupid Qiao Ying-chun was, the more she would like her to be. But even if she was stupid, could she not behave so abnormally? This situation was inexplicably out of her control, wasn't it? Why did she suddenly throw herself at a little girl? Shi Huixin had actually seen Jojo's portrait before, but it was drawn by a shoddy artist. It was very different from the real Jojo. At first glance, Shi Huixin didn't get a clear look, and her line of sight was blocked by Qiao Ying-chun, who had pounced over to cause trouble for the little crown princess. As a result, Shi Huixin didn't recognize her for a moment. Bitch, you want to fight with me for everything, you want to snatch everything from me. Why don't you just go and die? At this moment, Qiao Ying-chun was completely seized by a terrifying fear. She fell into a crazy obsession, thinking that Auber must be here to steal the identity of the Mu family's daughter from her. How could she let her take it away? How could she allow herself to return to the lower star field that gnawed on tree bark and grass and was filled with terrifying monsters? The moment she saw Mr. Jojo, the stupid string in her head snapped. She was too terrified. She wanted to eliminate the source of her fear, which was Sir Jojo. Jojo was also a little surprised. She didn't even freaking make a move to cause trouble for Qiao Ying-chun, right? This Qiao Ying-chun was like an idiot, throwing herself to death? No wonder everyone looked at her as if she was a lunatic. Where did she get the confidence to think that she could pounce on Sir Jojo and press him to the ground to beat and bite him? Bam! Auber raised her leg and swept it across. Qiao Ying-chun retreated at twice the speed. Chapter 25:43. Her legs were slightly bent, and she maintained a kneeling posture. Her knees rubbed against the ground heavily, and she uncontrollably retreated backward. This posture was really pure and clean. The corners of everyone's eyes twitched, and they rolled their eyes inwardly. If she didn't have the ability, why did she rush up to pick a fight? She was swept away by the little crown princess, right? Qiao Ying-chun knelt on the ground and coughed wretchedly. She looked at her knees, which had 2 bloody marks on them, in shock. What happened just now? Her short-circuited brain was finally connected, and her body couldn't help but tremble slightly. She actually went to fight that terrifying woman from Arba? When she looked up, she saw Qiao Mu slowly walking over and standing in front of her. The little girl looked down at her with a strange glint in her eyes. Who allowed you to use my name in reverse? Madame Zhong Li's heart skipped a beat. She was about to step forward to stop her when the young madam pulled her back. Madame Zhong Li thought about it. That's right. Today's incident happened even if it didn't happen. This little crown princess revealed a side that was different from ordinary people just now. She was arrogant, aloof, and spoke bluntly. She didn't listen to anyone. As the madam of Zhongli estate, she couldn't interfere with the crown princess's matters. She could only stand and watch. The other madams and young misses who were watching the show couldn't help but be taken aback. They recalled the crown princess's words just now and looked curiously at Qiao Ying-chun, who was still kneeling on the ground and unable to get up. Oh right, the crown princess's name was Arba. Didn't this Mu estate's young lady, Mu Qiao, have her name in reverse? Was it such a coincidence? Everyone thought. The little crown princess's icy gaze landed on Qiao Ying-chun. She sized her up from head to toe and sneered, "You want to pretend to be me? Look at your face. You're already so old, yet you're pretending to be a 15-year-old girl. Aren't you ashamed?" Everyone! Exclamation point. Qiao Ying-chun couldn't stop trembling. She was so angry. Her face was flushed red and covered with cold sweat and tears. The rouge on her face had long been soaked by sweat and tears, and now it was messily plastered on her face like mud. Arbor looked at her disheveled appearance and said mockingly, "Although I don't care about the Mu family, it doesn't mean that you can impersonate me. Do you understand what I mean?" Qiao Yingchuan's entire body trembled. The fury of being exposed in front of everyone and having her identity exposed almost shot out from her chest. She was so angry that her whole body trembled and her teeth chattered non-stop. She screamed, "T6, you're lying. Who wants to impersonate you? What did I replace you for?" The noble women in the courtyard were all astute people who wouldn't understand the meaning behind the crown princess words. At this moment, they were all whispering to each other in astonishment. Could it be that the young lady that the Mu family had brought home with great fanfare was actually a fake? According to the crown princess's words, she is the real daughter of the Mu family? What? Didn't they say that the crown princess was a village girl from a small mountain village in the lower star domain? How did she get involved with one of the 6 great patrician families, the Divine Province's talisman patrician family? The flames of gossip burned fiercely in everyone's hearts. Everyone couldn't help but look at Arbor, then at Qiao Yingchun. Their gazes swept back and forth between the two of them. Today's trip really wasn't in vain. Things kept coming up one after another. Tomorrow, the entire imperial capital's noblewomen would definitely talk about it. Chapter 2544. Arbor crouched down in front of Qiao Yingchun, propping up her small chin. She sized her up a few times. "Qiao Yingchun, you've only grown older these past few years, but you've lost your wisdom, right? I was originally wondering which brainless person actually dared to impersonate this crown princess." Arbor reached out a finger and lightly poked Qiao Yingchuan's head. "I didn't expect this, and I'm a bit shocked. They actually brought you here." Arbor turned to look at the dumbstruck concubine Shi standing to the side. Concubine Shi's mind finally returned to normal. She understood that the person standing in front of her, whom everyone called the crown princess, was none other than Arbor. Concubine Shi was a bit frantic on the inside. When exactly did this Arbor enter the capital? Why didn't she receive any news at all? Arbor stood up, her gaze landing on Shi Huixin as she recalled the contents of the information. "You're that concubine Shi? Shi Huixin?" Concubine Shi adjusted her expression, then bowed to Arbor with a fawning smile. "Greetings to the crown princess. May I ask how my Mu family's young miss offended the crown princess? If..." Arbor raised a hand to cut her off. "You brought Qiao Yingchun here to replace me just to cause trouble for me? What exactly is your motive? Crown princess must be joking. What motive could I, a mere concubine, have? Me?" Arbor's expression abruptly changed, and she suddenly launched an attack. "Caixio. Present. Slap her." Caixio was now very familiar with slapping people's mouths. She was already very familiar with it. She walked up, rolled up her sleeves, and swiftly slapped concubine Shi's left cheek. "Lowly servant. You actually dare to call yourself me, in front of the crown princess. Unruly thing." Following that, another slap came on her right cheek. The crown princess didn't say to stop, so she slapped concubine Shi on both sides several times. That concubine mother was beaten until she screamed miserably. She was so angry that she couldn't help but tremble, and her cheeks were flushed red. Seeing this, Mu Royun was about to go crazy. She screamed, "Mother!" and took out several attack talismans from her sleeves. She threw them at Arbor without a care. "How dare you!" Princess Consort Kong shouted angrily. "Hurry up and stop, you little child of the Mu family." The other madams, including Madame Zhongli, also rebuked angrily. However, those talismans abruptly stopped in front of Qiao Mu. Mu Royun's fingers repeatedly formed seals. Once, twice, thrice, and countless times, she was unable to open the talisman. A trace of bewilderment flashed through her eyes. Let's go back. Arbor gently waved his hand. Those talismans then retreated back along the original path and suddenly appeared in front of Mu Royun. Immediately after, talisman energy shot out in all directions, and several whooshing sounds were heard as they attacked her. Ah! Mu Royun frantically dodged the attack talisman. However, how could she possibly dodge at such a close distance? She was instantly hit by 2 of the talisman energy beams. She spat out blood and flew out, landing with a thud on the ground. At this moment, Concubine Sher had already been slapped more than a dozen times. She was struggling to retaliate, but the Crown Prince's personal guard pressed down on her shoulder. Enough. Arbor spoke indifferently. His gaze swept over Kai Shio's red palm, and his eyes flashed. He threw her a small bottle of ointment, then picked out a palm-sized ferrule from his inner world and threw it to her. Are you stupid? I told you to hit people, but you wronged yourself. In the future, use a ruler to hit her. Kai Shio's expression froze. Then, she cracked a smile and bowed. She said brightly, Yes, Crown Princess. Everyone. Chapter 2545. Jojo, are you all right? Princess Consort Kang's question was truly ruthless. The other madams really wanted to ask Princess Consort, which eye of yours saw that something happened to the Crown Princess? The little Crown Princess shook her head at Princess Consort Kang. Imperial Aunt, they can't hurt me. That's good, that's good. Princess Consort Kang said with heartache, I don't know where these wicked women came from. Each and every one of them is so ignorant and unruly. If we had known earlier that we were attending this kind of banquet, we wouldn't have come. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Madame Zhong Li's face. She was also abnormally grieved and indignant. A perfectly good plum blossom banquet turned out like this. She was more infuriated than anyone else. I'll give you 2 days to clarify the matter of the impostor. I don't want to hear any nonsensical rumors about the name Mu Qiao. After saying this, Arbor took Princess Consort Kang's hand and walked out of the courtyard. Halfway there, she turned back and glanced at Concubine Sher, who was glaring angrily, with a spurious smile. If your Mu family doesn't deal with this impostor within 2 days, don't blame me for using my methods to deal with this matter. I don't think you want to know how I'll deal with your Mu family. Arbor coldly glanced at them. Shi Huixin only felt that the little girl's icy gaze was like an evil spirit from the depths of hell, instantly snatching away half of her soul. I'm not even afraid of the netherworld or hell, so why would I be afraid of you vicious people? Throw the impostor back to the Mu family. I'm afraid Concubine Sher won't be able to deliver the message. Go and deliver this Crown Princess's message to the Mu family. Yes. The Crown Prince's personal guards responded in unison. They nimbly picked up Qiao Ying-chun, who was limp on the ground, and quickly walked out of the courtyard. Once these personal guards left, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. In addition, with the Crown Princess supporting Princess Consort Kang out, everyone felt that the air was much better. They looked at Shi Huixin, who was frozen there with an exceptionally unsightly expression. She then looked at Mu Royun, who was lying on the ground and vomiting blood. Everyone shifted their gazes to Shi Yongqian, who had been untied from the tree and was on the verge of death. She silently lit a candle for them in her heart and gave herself a serious warning. After seeing her today, the little Crown Princess was definitely not a kind person. Don't mess with him, absolutely don't mess with him. Whoever messed with him would be unlucky. Sir Jojo was in a good mood. He supported Princess Kang as they strolled slowly in the garden. Since they were here to attend the Plum Blossom Banquet, then since they were already here, they might as well enjoy the plum blossoms. Jojo, is that Mu family's Inyong Shi really so bold as to find a random person to impersonate you? Princess Consort Kang said angrily. Is there something wrong with this woman's brain? She's very clever. She wanted the fake to discredit me first. After that, when I came back, no matter how I tried to salvage the situation, the bad reputation had already spread. Princess Consort Kong was extremely shocked. She's really indulging in fantasy. Arbor smirked. But who cares? As long as I'm strong enough, I have the power to shut all of these frogs who make a fuss. Princess Consort Kong nodded approvingly and said with a laugh, Right, the old prince also spoke like that. I was wondering why I hit it off with you so well. It turns out your personality is really similar to the old prince's. Oh right, there's no time like the present. Don't go back to the Eastern Palace in a while. Come home with me. 10:00 p.m. Chapter 2546. Arbor didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This Princess Consort Kong truly had the personality of immediately pulling the sails at the mention of wind. After Arbor accompanied Princess Consort Kong around the plum garden, she saw that the Princess Consort was a bit tired, so Arbor helped the Princess Consort to a viewing pavilion on the side to rest. Suddenly, a young maidservant rushed out from the side of the pavilion and mindlessly almost crashed into Princess Consort Kang's arms. The old mama who accompanied and protected the Princess Consort was experienced and reacted quickly. She flew forward to block and push, causing the young maidservant to stumble. The old mama was like a thick wall, blocking the Princess Consort and the young crown princess. Her brows furrowed as she sternly said, Which branch's maidservant are you? Are you so blind? That young maidservant fell to the ground, her entire body trembling uncontrollably. She quickly flipped over and respectfully crawled to the ground, kowtowing as she cried, Noble one, please forgive me, noble one, please forgive me. Princess Consort Kong frowned and looked down at the stains on her embroidered shoes. That maidservant had rushed out suddenly, and when she retreated, half of her foot had stepped into the flower bed on the side. Now, her embroidered shoes were also stained with mud and looked very indecent. That young maidservant hastily kowtowed and said, Let this servant lead noble one to the pavilion around the corner to change her shoes. Princess Consort Kong nodded. Arbor rose to follow the Princess Consort. Unexpectedly, that young maidservant hastily crawled forward and knelt a few steps, saying urgently, Noble one, please stay here for now. That pavilion is very small, not even as big as the steepled loft. The two of them won't be able to turn around. Princess Consort Kong coldly glanced at that young maidservant. What do you mean by wanting the crown princess to stay here? Who wasn't shrewd in the maelstrom of power? Princess Consort Kong was such an intelligent person that she could discern that maidservant's thoughts at a glance. The young maidservant's face paled in fright, and she stammered, No. This servant doesn't dare to have any other thoughts. It's just that the pavilion is too small. Princess Consort Kong signaled with her eyes. The old mama by her side rolled up her sleeves and was about to step forward. Arbor stopped her and looked at the girl with deep meaning in his eyes. Imperial Aunt, since someone wants me to stay here, then I'll stay here and take a look. It would be a waste of someone else's efforts. You child. Why are you so curious? Princess Consort Kong glanced at her reproachfully and nodded, saying, Then I'll be right back. Okay, I'll stay here and wait for Imperial Aunt. The little fellow spoke expressionlessly. In Princess Consort Kang's eyes, he was exceptionally adorable. He really wanted to pinch the little girl's bun face. She looked so cute. Sir Jojo watched as Princess Kong left. He felt a little strange. What was going on with Princess Kang's happy expression, as if she had been struck by something cute? How could there be anything cute here? Jojo was actually a little curious as to who had arranged such a strange scene. That young maidservant didn't have much acting talent at a glance. She had made it so obvious that her little thoughts had been seen through at a glance. What did the mastermind want to do by using such a clumsy method to forcefully send Princess Kong away and force her to stay here? The little fellow took out a cup of piping hot spiritual tea from her inner world and sipped it intermittently, waiting calmly in the midst of chaos. She felt like she was waiting for a rabbit to appear. Unfortunately, she wasn't a tortoise. Instead, she was a vicious wolf that could devour human flesh. Chapter 2547. When Zhongli Jiwei and her group of girlfriends arrived at the viewing pavilion, they saw the little girl sitting in the pavilion from afar. She was holding a cup of steaming hot tea and sipping it in small sips. Hearing the sound of footsteps, the little girl didn't even lift her eyelids. Outside the pavilion, Aunt Jing took a few steps forward and reached out to block the path of the girls. She frowned and looked at Zhongli Jiwei. "The crown princess is resting here. Unrelated people are not allowed to come near," Aunt Jing said with a straight face. Aunt Jing was an old person in the palace and had been immersed in the palace for decades. She naturally had an aura that could suppress a group of young girls in a matter of minutes. Zhongli Jiwei clearly recognized Aunt Jing. She was very respectful towards Aunt Jing. She stepped forward and curtsied, then smiled and said, "Zhongli residents, Zhongli Jiwei greets Aunt Jing. We came specially to pay our respects to Her Highness the Crown Princess." Aunt Jing's gaze fell on Zhongli Jiwei, but her expression didn't change. "Wait here." After that, she let Kai Xiao and Kai Chi continue to block the others. She quickly walked into the pavilion and bowed to the little Crown Princess. "Crown Princess, Miss Zhongli and her group are asking for an audience." Aber had already seen the group of girls. There were about 7 or 8 of them. Zhongli Jiwei was the leader and the left Prime Minister's daughter, Chan Baojia, was following closely behind. A group of maidservants and biddies surrounded this group of noble girls. For a moment, they were dazzled with jewels, bright and beautiful, and the fragrance of cosmetics assailed their nostrils. "Let's see them." Aber nodded expressionlessly. "These people sent the Wang Fei away. Weren't they here to cause trouble? Fine. Fighting once was fighting twice was fighting countless times was still fighting." Miss Chow relented, so Aunt Jing let Zhongli Jiwei lead the group of girls into the pavilion. Fortunately, the pavilion was relatively large. After 7 or 8 girls walked in, it wasn't too crowded. Zhongli Jiwei smiled and walked forward. She bent down and curtsied. "Greetings to the Crown Princess." Regardless of whether Chan Baojia and the others were happy or not, at least on the surface, they all bowed politely. Aber didn't make things difficult for them. He nodded and let them rise. "Has the Crown Princess been to the elegant court? If not, why don't you let Jiwei lead the way and take the Crown Princess to have a look?" Zhongli Jiwei had a courteous look and said with a gentle expression, "In our elegant court, the winter sweet blooms are the best. It would be a pity if the Crown Princess missed it." "But I still have to wait here for the princess," Aber said faintly. "It doesn't matter. Jiwei left a maid, and the Crown Princess left a maid here to wait for Wang Fei." Later, when Wang Fei came, she would help Wang Fei lead the way to Yeyuan. "What does the Crown Princess think?" Aba's dark eyes swept across her face, and a trace of coldness appeared at the corner of his lips. When Zhongli Jiwei met this calm gaze, she didn't know why, but her heart inexplicably trembled. She still had a smile on her face, but the smile unconsciously became a bit forced. "What does the Crown Princess think?" Zhongli Jiwei asked again. Aber didn't disappoint her. He nodded very calmly. "Miss Zhongli invited me so warmly. This Crown Princess naturally can't disappoint you." Zhongli Jiwei smiled a bit awkwardly. "Crown Princess, please." Chan Baojia smiled and chattered. "Crown Princess, the plum blossoms in the elegant court are blooming very well." Chapter 2548. There are many precious varieties. "It's not commonly seen even in the palace," Chen Baojia said with a grin. "Crown Princess, have you seen the black moon plum on Seekong planet? Oh my, there's also a type that surpasses the snow-white plum. Everyone says that it can compete with the snow domain's divine flower in appearance." A woman with slender eyes and a sharp chin couldn't resist snickering. "Miss Chen, aren't you joking? Where would the lower star domain's snow domain's divine flower come from? The Crown Princess probably hasn't even heard of it." The young Crown Princess blinked. She tilted her head and pondered before taking out a snow domain's divine flower from her inner world. Are you talking about this? Everyone. The face of the slit-eyed young miss who ridiculed the little stoic instantly flushed red. Some even retreated several steps and glared at the young crown princess in shock. Crown princess, you. Why didn't this snow domain's divine flower attack her? Didn't they say that the snow domain's divine flower was proud and couldn't be touched by normal people? Why didn't anything happen when the young crown princess held that flower in her small paw? When everyone saw that the snow domain's divine flower was actually a complete divine herb with a complete root, they couldn't help but stare at the young crown princess as if they had seen a ghost. Two young ladies gathered their courage and took a few steps closer. They carefully observed and nodded. It seems to be the snow domain's divine flower. Most of them had only seen this snow domain's divine flower in dossiers. How could they have seen the real thing? Looking at the young crown princess's indifferent expression as she held the snow domain's divine flower, those who didn't know would think that she had only taken a wild flower. How could they know that the young crown princess's 100-herb garden was filled with snow domain's divine flowers? Back then, Duan Yu gave her the storage talisman that contained the snow domain's divine flower. Besides that, there were also all kinds of strange concealed weapons and trinkets inside the storage talisman. When she opened that storage talisman to take a look, she was truly a bit surprised. When she thought of this snow domain's divine flower, she couldn't help but recall the days when she turned into a ferret. After turning into a small animal, there were many things that were out of my control. Fortunately, this was all in the past. Jojo, Sama would never tell anyone about his dark history. Humph. The little crown princess didn't let the girls admire it for long before she quietly put away the snow domain divine flower. Ji Xiang, the slender-eyed girl who had mocked the young crown princess and had never heard of the snow domain divine flower, had long since fallen silent. Seeing her blushing and hiding behind the crowd with her tail between her legs, the little crown princess glanced at her and ignored her. Zhongli Jiwei laughed dryly, then pretended to ask casually, "The crown princess actually carries such a perfect snow domain divine flower with her? I heard that the snow domain divine flower can't be grown unless it's in an extremely cold place." That's right. The crown princess can just throw the snow domain divine flower into her inner world. Will that work? Moreover, doesn't the snow domain divine flower attack people? I saw that the crown princess grabbed it with her hand earlier, but the snow domain divine flower didn't do anything to you. Thus, the little crown princess took out the snow domain divine flower again and handed it to Zhongli Jiwei. Zhongli Jiwei carefully reached out to touch the snow domain divine flower's spherical flower. All of a sudden, that flower grew wildly as if it had gone berserk, and all of its petals opened. Seeing that it was about to swallow Zhongli Jiwei's arm, the girls shrieked and pulled Zhongli Jiwei back. Chapter 2549. The young crown prince consort stroked this divine flower comfortingly before calmly putting it away. It turned out that this flower was a flower that could go crazy at any time. If you don't believe me, you can touch it and feel it for yourself. The little crown princess didn't want to say anything to these idiots. She glanced at them and walked into the arched door of the elegant court. Zhongli Jiwei bit her lips with a pale face. She looked at Chen Baojia, who was behind her and also looked pale. They exchanged glances and nodded. Then, they followed the little crown princess into the elegant court. The girls, who were defeated in the first round, smiled and surrounded them again. It was as if nothing had happened. Zhongli Jiwei recovered her dignified and elegant appearance, and she led Xiao Mu through the forest in elegant park. She pointed out the various famous flowers and plants in the park, showing them off to the young crown prince consort. My father bought this jasper begonia from a gardener. He spent a lot of money to buy it. At first, the gardener kept it as the treasure of his shop. How could he sell it to my father? Zhongli Jiwei smiled and said, but the gardener saw that my father was a person who cherished flowers, so he reluctantly gave it to my father after much consideration. My father spent 300,000 spirit coins to buy this famous flower. You can appreciate it. This jasper begonia can bloom all year round. It has a long flowering period, and the flowers are rich and gorgeous. I have heard that Lord Left Prime Minister is the best at appreciating flowers. Today, I see that every flower in this garden is exquisite. The young Crown Prince consort reached out and took out a pot of tender and juicy jasper begonia. She also liked the jasper begonia very much. It was green in color and magnificent. After she raised one for her grandmother, she asked Little Tree to take the flower seeds and cultivate a batch of them on Paradise Planet for her. Was it rare? What kind of rare flowers and plants didn't she have in Paradise Planet? Showing off. Lord Jojo curled his lips. On the other hand, Miss Zhongli, whose face was once again swollen, had her entire pretty face flushed red. Looking at the pot in the Crown Princess's hands, whether it was in terms of appearance or color, it was much better than the jasper begonia that her family had spent a lot of money to buy. Don't you think this stoic-faced Crown Princess is infuriating? She won't talk to you either. If you mocked her for being ignorant, she would take something out of her inner world and slap you in the face. He didn't even give them a King chance to breathe. What was her inner world doing? Was there such a big space to store all these random things? As it turned out, the little Crown Princess really had nothing better to do. At this moment, she took out flowers one by one. The little Crown Princess had all of them, including the Shang Shui white plum and black moon plum that they had mentioned earlier. They looked plump and glossy, and their appearance was stunning. All the girls. He didn't know what to say. If only I could take back what I just said. This kind of inexplicable face slapping made them feel very angry, okay? Was this little Crown Princess's inner world being used as a warehouse by her? What kind of stuff was she piling up? She took out pots of flowers one by one, as if they didn't take up any space. Suddenly, she wanted to imitate the Crown Princess and show a stoic expression, indicating that she didn't want to talk. It would be best if she could reflect the deep malice that the Crown Princess had towards her. Where did this inexplicable feeling of suffocation come from? Chapter 2550. The young Crown Princess, who didn't want to speak, glanced at the women and saw that they were all pretending to admire the plum blossoms in the garden. Only then did she put away all the pots of flowers. Just now, in order to take them out for others to admire, she even specially asked Sapling to put them in pots and bring them out. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain why every plant had soil and roots, so why did she put them all in her inner world? At this moment, the young Crown Princess was also somewhat dissatisfied. It was clearly these women who were showing off all kinds of precious flowers in front of her and even mocked her for saying that she had never heard of the snow region's divine flower. The meaning behind their words was that they were mocking her, a nobody who came from the lower star region to the upper three prefectures, for not having seen the world. She was only providing evidence to prove that she had knowledge, so why did these women's faces turn sour and ignore her? A group of narrow-minded people. The young Crown Princess paced to Zhongli Jiwei's side and said with a serious face, "Go and see if the princess consort is here." Zhongli Jiwei nodded pretentiously and pulled a servant girl over, asking her to wait for the princess consort at the round arched door. Then, she rolled her eyes and turned to Arbor with a smile. "Crown Princess, don't worry. The servant girl I left behind will lead the way for the princess consort." Qiao Mu nodded expressionlessly as she mocked inwardly. She had already flaunted her wealth and admired the treasured plum blossoms just now. If this Miss Zhong Li didn't have any tricks up her sleeve, then she really would be disappointed in her. She spent so much effort to send the princess consort away. She couldn't have just wanted to make fun of her, right? Moreover, they probably didn't have enough fun. After all, they were all in a bad mood after being slapped in the face just now. At this moment, the slender-eyed girl, Ji Xiang, suddenly shouted, "Hey, look, that plum blossom is really blooming. Let's go closer and take a look." Zhongli Jiwei's eyes flickered. She took out a handkerchief and pretended to wipe the sweat from the corner of her mouth. She laughed softly and said, "Miss Ji, walk slowly." As Ji Xiang spoke, she quickened her pace and walked towards the plum tree. Looking up at the blooming plum blossoms, Ji Xiang pretended to accidentally twist her leg and slapped the plum tree in front of her. Buzz! A large mass of things flew out from the tree and flew towards the girls in the crowd. Ah! The girls screamed and hurriedly covered their noses and mouths with their handkerchiefs, waving them in front of their faces. Xiao Mu creased her brows and sniffed lightly. A dark glint involuntarily flashed through her eyes. A group of whimsical women actually learned the method of soaking handkerchiefs in insect repellent. In this way, by waving the handkerchief, he could avoid being stung by those stinging bees. Jojo could not help but want to laugh when he saw the 7 or 8 of them carefully wave their handkerchiefs in the same movement. There was a hint of mockery in their eyes. How dare he try to assassinate Jojo with such methods? That's good. Since these women like to play with stinging bees so much, she would give them something to add to the fun. Xiao Mu surreptitiously raised her small hand and released a batch of fiery evil poisonous mosquitoes from Paradise Planet. Buzz! The fiery evil mosquitoes raised a pair of small cicada wings, flapped their wings, and flew towards the group of dumbfounded noblewomen. What's going on? What is that? They saw a mass of unknown black substance flying towards them. Zhongli Jiwei and the others all panicked. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.